Inside the halls of Europe, you can find thousands of artworks and books that show the tale of Africa. Perhaps the biggest collection is in the Vatican archives. The Vatican archives, which have been trying to release these information, but still have not to this date, boast that they have thousands of objects and even writings of Africa. The early missionaries who came to Africa collected tons and tons of native artifacts, and one of them was the artifact known as writings. Script was very important in Africa, and as you can see, the earliest they collect is from the 17th century. But they did not just collect them, they hid them away. Most people in the world don't even know they exist, and people in Africa really don't know they exist. Because, of course, in Africa, there's been a brainwashing to make us think that writing in Africa started in the 1900s. These works that have been hidden inside these libraries bring so much problems inside Africa. Like, first of all, we seem to have no real attachment to writing. And a lot of the people in Africa would not recognize writing outside of the Arabic and English script. And so this is why it's important for them to repatriate a lot of these writings. One of the people who is responsible for trying to get these out is a priest by the name of Father Joseph Penkoski. As we read, Catholic missionaries began collecting African artifacts in the 17th century and today numbers some 10,000 objects. However, the Vatican collection of African art has been poorly documented and poorly appreciated. Father Joseph Penkovsky, curator of the Museo Missionary Ethnico, is trying to rectify this situation. Luckily for me, the School of African and Oriental Studies has put out a digital archive of their African manuscripts. These manuscripts are not actually translated, but they at least have the potential to be translated. Now, the problem though is they are still inside London, inside UK, and this is a huge problem because, of course, they don't belong there. Another problem, though, is that a lot of people don't actually want them to return to Africa, thinking that they will be destroyed. Ironic, considering the fact that many writings, which, by the way, I looked up the Vasco da Gama law books, and according to Portuguese websites, a lot of the things that were gathered by Vasco da Gama were burned in a fire. So that's probably never going to materialize anytime soon. I've been digging and digging to find these law books that Vasco da Gama said he sent back to his king, and apparently a lot of the archives that belonged to those people were destroyed in wars. But I guess it's still possible to find more information. But that's the ironic part when you consider the fact that they're saying that if they bring it back to Africa, these writings will be destroyed, as if Africa does not have the potential to keep things safe. I mean, we have our own law books today that we are not destroying. And of course, it's not about the actual writings themselves and whether or not they have historical material, but in fact, just to gather the information and put it down on paper and go, okay, here it is. Here's what we have. Here's what we can work with in Africa and tear it down itself. For example, as you can see here, this here that's written in Roman writing or the letters that are, English like, This is how you can tell this thing is new because it's written in English letters. You can tell the older ones because they're written in Arabic letters. And then there's an even older one, which apparently, again, we have to dig way deeper to find because apparently there was a writing system that was native to Africa that is now just gone or they lost somehow. I've got a feeling that if we go through the Vatican archives, we will find something and we will even find translations as we find them in the Zulu archives of Frank Jollis. This poem slash writing slash document slash prayer is a very interesting work because it tells us that these people had their own complete way of talking. In here, there is prayers to Muhammad, and so clearly this is a Muslim writing. But I actually want to talk about something more interesting before I read this. It's the fact that the people who wrote this, they were Swahili, and that's interesting. And then there are the black Portuguese people. So the people located in the Portuguese areas who were not slaves, were free men who operated in those areas. But there's a third group of people which I've never mentioned before, which I'll talk about in another video. These people had to bind together to create great groups, and through that they invented their own languages so that they could communicate with both the people of the Swahili and they could communicate with the Portuguese at the same time. A lot of people have no idea that that even exists. That these people who are located near Swahili in the Malawi region existed and they were fortified. They stayed away from the Portuguese and they stayed away from the other Swahili people to the point where they formed a confederacy which pushed back on this idea that they need to become civilized by the Arabs or they need to be civilized by the Portuguese. Now, don't get me wrong, these people continued to have their own civilization that grew as this civilization was a joiner of three different countries today. So, what does this poem say? Well, first, its name is Utene Kima, and it says, please give me ink and paper, for example, and a sharp pen to write on. Give me a place where I can take care of my thoughts and think while wandering. Write the name of God in the name of the one who sat in the heavens and Nohi Sikataga. Give mercy and mercy to all creatures and animals creeping flesh. Do not write with mercy. Grant mercy to the nobles of Kadima and unmarried wives. His love for all people gives him sustenance, and he does not forget the creatures he did not know. Here, when I have finished, I do not need to go further because I should like Muhammadi. His qualities are as great as the sea. We will call them. I will give them what I got. The college won't search it, won't see stories. There is a story in college that saddened me, like what Ramani told us. He reads a lot of books that contain wonderful information, should they be written in Arabic, and he reads them aloud. Make a childish story with heavy words, kins and swiffer of note Nasi Tawahaditha, or the Hadiths. Fair stories, Adwina Duria, will end when the day of judgment comes, the beginning of his knowledge, when the compassionate will come to the earth. Let us tell you first, Elenima Abdallah bin Abbasaf Abasi Fadwila Radialu Ta'ala said when he heard it. He received a statement from Muhammad, the messenger of God. May God bless him and grant him peace. He said, Mungana, pray, Lahu wasalamu, when the day of resurrection occurs. Who will be there for 40 years until all the wells will fall? Don't have the sustenance to eat or sleep at night, or to go freely with a helper to enter. If you say that you are going to get rid of it and doubt it, is not going to fly to great trouble and hunger. By the way, that's only one page of 12 of that writing, but I'm not going to read it all. Over here, we have a Nigerian written script, and that's very interesting. Now, remember, writing is only one way of visualizing what happened. There are also drawings which were drawn by both native and non natives. One of those that are drawn by non natives, namely people from Eastern Europe, is this. This watercolor depicts what is written as an Ethiopian woman, but it is known that this is a person of the Maravi. Now, the Maravi, like I said, is a word used for Malawi. Malawi being the native word meaning fire in the native language, Bantu languages. And this word Malawi or Maravi in Portuguese represents the sophisticated group that existed in the country that is today known as Malawi, which, by the way, the country known as Malawi has another history that goes beyond what we know today, as it's always been a crossroads between the Swahili and the interlands of Africa. But again, I need to flesh out that story so that I don't give you a piece or a disjointed account.